So let us discuss about 07 September 2015 newspaper. The first article is related to gender parity, and there is a very valid explanation given regarding to the gender parity over here. Now, in my previous test, I have posed one of the questions to you. Is gender mainstreaming is an effective way to fight the gender injustice? You have many points from here how the gender mainstreaming can create an impact on various aspects of the society. Now, first thing is there is an economic sense to the gender mainstreaming. The growth, it is said that it can increase in United States by 5%, 9% in Japan, 27% in India, according to IMF President Christine Lagarde. And next is more than the economic sense, the hunger to fight against the hunger, the agricultural output has to be increased. If you can remember Vandana Shiva in India, she spoke about feminization of the agriculture. Last year the question was on feminization of poverty. The feminization of agriculture. So she was herself described as an eco-feminist. So here the eco-feminist, it means she is more environmentalist and also a feminist too. The agricultural production has to be shifted towards the hands of the women. So the Food and Agricultural Organization, what it has said is, the women taking up the agriculture, it will increase production by 100 million ton, or it means the 4% of the production will be increased in the agriculture. So it means that 100 million people can be fed with this. The 4% of growth will be seen in the agriculture. And next is, there are two factors, education and employment play an important role in the gender mainstreaming. So with regard to education, conditioning of the girl child education to the caste transfers that creates an impact in mainstreaming. The second important factor is access towards the education, the physical access. Now, the sanitation is one important factor, and also providing for the roads and electricity to travel to the school. All these factors all these play an important role. In South Africa, providing of electricity has increased the enrollment in the schools specifically. UNESCO also has clearly said in India the major reason for the dropout of the girl children from the schools is related to lack of proper sanitation facilities in the schools. Now coming to the labor participation, though the education is high in few societies such as Japan, the labor participation of the women is not equivalent to men. What was the reason over there? So we can explore this lack of financial access to the women. It means relatively men and women are compared. The amount of the money available to the women for self-financing and to run their business is very less. And next is the cost of child rearing. So the cost involved in the child rearing, when it is high, women tries to take up that particular responsibility. Now, if cost of child rearing has come down by half, it is going to increase at least 10% of the women coming into the workforce. And next is there are certain legal restrictions. So there are certain legal parameters. If you see that in the September 9th newspaper, there is a High Court judgment. So Indian Navy, women has to be mainstreamed or else has to be permanently commissioned as like men. So it means till now not having such a provision, it is illegal or else it's a systematic barrier towards the women to enter into the higher services. So these have to be rectified. For example, if paternal leave is improved, the connectivity of the women to the labor market will not be reduced. They may continue with their jobs. So all these things talk about the gender mainstreaming. Now, the next article is related to the gag on Greenpeace. Now, we know the civil society organizations. Today there are two important articles. One talks about gag on Greenpeace. The other one is government taking the guidance from the RSS. Both of them come under the definition of the civil society. The attitude of the government is different from in the both. Now, the Greenpeace, it's an environmental protection related NGO, and the government has imposed a Foreign Contributions Regulation Act to de-recognize the Greenpeace. It means that the Greenpeace will not be in a position to receive any finances from the outside India. And you know, for any organization's finance is from very critical. So in this context, the Greenpeace, which is making alternative voice to hear with regard to environmental destruction, is going to lose its own voice. So in any free country, you shall have the freedom and also the liberties. They shall go hand in hand, the free speech and liberties. But it shows that the government high-handedness, overarching behavior is flowing from the misuse of this particular, the Foreign Contributions Regulations Act. Here my opinion is this. Any NGO or any body which is functioning within the land, within our country, it has to function according to the law of the land. But however, the law itself has to be reasonable. So that's what the gag on the Greenpeace is not in alignment with the democratic and liberal principles of our society. And the second thing is the minister-civil servant relationship. Now, if you observe, after the BJP government has come into power, in the Home Ministry, two of the Home Secretaries were unceremoniously sent out. Even the same thing happened with regard to the External Affairs Ministry, where the Foreign Secretary Sujata Singh was unceremoniously transferred or removed. So it means that the minister-civil servant relationship, it has to be more guided by trust and faith. So the change in the politics of the day shall not change the bureaucracy and its functioning. The bureaucracy's essentiality lies in its continuity. So this rift which is growing between the politics and bureaucracy may damage the motivation of the bureaucracy to function. The second thing is, the Delhi Chief Minister versus Lieutenant Governor already has demotivated most of the civil servants to take up the responsibility. So it has made them to take the sides. It ultimately will compromise the neutrality and functioning of these services. And the next one is RSS. So as counter to the previous article, now here government is taking the advice from a patriarchal institution which it considers, that is RSS. Now let us see the government as an institution, if it functions, it has to be accountable and its function has to strengthen the democratic institutions and processes. On the other hand, government taking a support from RSS or giving a progress report to RSS, which is not accountable to any authority, it makes it or keeps it into the position of extra constitutional authority to whom government is becoming responsible to. Here there is one challenge. Till date, though we can see some extra constitutional forces working, they worked mostly at the individual level. Now RSS, if we consider it as an extra constitutional authority, it is more functioning as the institutional level without any accountability to any people and also without a transparency in its functioning. So it means it is taking it to the next level. So if a democracy has to be adjudged, to what extent it can retain the strength, to what extent it can keep away these forces, that becomes the major factor for me. So in this context, I can say that the strength of the democracy or the strength of the political traditions depends upon their ability to keep pressure groups. I want to consider RSS as a Hindutva pressure group. So keep these pressure groups away from this particular working. Now, the G. Sampath article, when I was talking about, I told to you clearly, so the Hindutva or Sanatana Dharma in this country, it is not reflecting the entire set of people who are Hindus. It only reflects only a minority section of the people who are on the upper alignment of the Hindus. So, for example, now meat eating ban. So the people who are called as Shudras are in the Varna system. Their major source of the nutrition is the meat. So in this context, the meat ban, it goes against or it is in favor of the interests of the few people in the upper caste Hindus. So it means, in the name of the Hindutva, what promoted is a minority interest of few upper caste Hindus rather than the total Hinduism as a whole. So which I just wanted to add as a point over here. So that is the reason why when Mandir and Mandal issue has come up, the Hindutva brigade, it has more supported the Mandal supported the Mandir against Mandal too. They tried to fizzle out the Mandal issue. So all these things you need to take into consideration. Again, I am not against to any party, any religion or any reservation system. My objective is to make the things clear to you. And next is, with regard to the inner line permit, I have discussed enough on inner line permit. Now with regard to this valley region and also hilly region. So with regard to the hilly region, there are Kukis, Nagas and other tribal people. Valley region in Manipur is dominated by Meiteis. Now, the valley region, it constitutes just 9% but occupied by 60+% of the population. And also, more and more land in the valley region is given out for the governmental activities, especially with regard to oil and natural gas establishments. And also, outsiders are buying the land in valley. So the existing movement of Meiteis for inner line permit is to restrict the outsider movement into the valley. Now Kukis and Nagas fear that they are also can be considered as outsiders in Manipur, because if 1951 year is taken as a basis and the census enumeration of this year becomes the basis, many of these people, tribal people, they entered to Manipur at a later date. And also those who are existing before 1951, they are not enumerated in the census properly because they live in the remote hamlets. So in this context, the recent 3 laws passed by the Manipur Assembly, which apply only to the valley, that has caused the resentment among this particular Kukis and Nagas, which has led to the spread of the violence. So this is what is about this issue. Now, always crashing in the same car. It's a very beautiful article. It tries to explain interplay between the finance and next is the state, labor and capital. These are the 4 factors which it tries to interplay between. Now, if you see the post-World War II scenario, the world was influenced by the depression factors. So as the state and workers gained the argument or gained the support over there. So that's why the state taxation and regulation and the wages, they determine the economic pie or the cake. Now the state regulation has increased. It also has led to the failure of the state because of the corruption. From 1970s onwards, the finance tried to dominate the things. This finance has led to creation of a bubble which has created something called as a global recession in 2008. So in America, this finance, it has led to dot-com bubble and also the real estate bubble. So India, in the globalization era, the integration between the countries, it can happen through trade and finance. The China took the path of the trade and India took the path of the finance. Understand that these can exist to an extent combined together. So, but however, China took the path of the trade and the growth strategy is called as export-led growth strategy. So, the market demand outside the country that forms critical for this kind of the growth. So, the cost of the goods have to be low to attract the greater markets outside the country. Further, China, it has restricted the wages of the labor. So because of this, the domestic demand has decreased in China. Now, as the export demand started falling after the recession, the China was in a soup. Because the domestic demand cannot be created immediately and the external demand has decreased. Now, can India occupy this position? Can India benefit anyway from this position? Understand, it is not due to the systemic weaknesses of China which it is suffering or lack of infrastructure or basic necessities. But India has many of the policy, infrastructure, other related bottlenecks to promote the trade. So if the economy, global economy revives tomorrow, then they try to favor the world god, that is China, rather than India, because it is not in a position to produce the goods at a price lesser than China. So this is about this article. And the next is global warming. So in this article, if you see, in the last 100 decades, whatever the climate, 100 years, whatever the climate change has occurred, the same thing happened within 40 years after the second phase. So now the existing space is just 2 degrees C. In this 0.8 degrees rise of the temperature has already happened. So it means there is a disproportionate accumulation of these anthropogenic gases by the Western societies. So in this context, how this particular remaining carbon space has to be used. So that is what is first dilemma. And the second thing is the delayed effects. What are meant by delayed effects? Whatever the carbon we are accumulating today, it will not affect us, but will affect the future generations. And the third thing is asymmetrical impacts. So the accumulation is in the West, but the effects are seen on the small island nations. Rich people accumulate more carbon, the poor people suffer worse from this climate change. So the factors are we need to consider for any policy on climate changes. So different countries are providing for different emissions, and per capita emissions are varying across the countries. United States, it releases, every person releases around 18 tons of carbon dioxide. If it comes to Denmark, around 7 tons. In India, less than 0.3 tons. It means India has the lowest emission per capita. So next is, why can't we differentiate the responsibilities based on survival emissions and luxury emissions? India, if it is producing electricity to provide a single light to the poor families, then it is a survival emission. On the other hand, a foreigner buying a big SUV is a luxury emission. So these are the factors we need to consider. And next is, from city of remembrance to city of hope, it is related to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So now, why the US has, this atomic bomb was deployed onto Japan? There are many cases to it. One is to end the war is one thing. And the second thing is, it says that US wanted to test the new weapon. It also do not know what are its real effects are. Whatever be the case, if you observe now, after the Hiroshima bombing, the rat race or else arms race has started across the countries. The Russia and the USSR and USA, the Cold War period, there was accumulation of these weapons. And NPT, though it was launched, it did not provide for any impact, and it can be mostly said as a failure because it did not know how to treat India and Pakistan. And also it was regularly negotiating with Israel without any outcome. And recently this Iran, though agreed for the nuclear deal, still it has retained its power to enrich for the peaceful uses. So based on this, so it was unable to control the nuclear proliferation completely. If you take North Korea, it went ahead and even tested a nuclear bomb, dirty bomb recently. So from this perspective, NPT did not provide for a clear solution. Now if you see Hiroshima, the mayor over there and the governor, so Hiroshima for global peace plan, and next is the mayors for peace. These are the activities that are gaining importance now in the country, so which can set an example and a spirit for us to go for nuclear disarmament. And next is floating range for missile defense system. Now what is meant by ballistic missile defense? When someone fires a missile, countering that missile in the mid-air and collapsing it, that is what is called ballistic missile defense. Now it is endo-atmospheric and exo-atmospheric. So what is the plan of India is to counter the missiles which have less than 2000 kilometer range initially and later extend it to greater than 2000 kilometers. So first exo followed by endo-atmospheric, because when missile counters the other incoming missile in the outside the atmosphere, then what will happen is this. The relative collateral damage on the earth will be very much minimal. So now, existing test range at Chandipur, Orissa, it has certain limitations. We cannot test a missile greater than 300-kilometer range over here, and also nearby villagers have to be regularly evacuated for this purpose. That's why a big ship is being built which can be used as a test range in the middle of the sea. That is what this article is about. And thank you very much. Good night.